It's been 4 years since Terry and I had a public interview like this, and my wounds have nearly healed. So we're ready for a rematch now this evening. I've spotted a bit of a correlation. I think it's the beginning of a correlation, is what Ian and Jack would probably say from a science perspective. I interview you on the occasions just after you've stepped off Discworld and back onto Round World. So last time we talked, it was on the occasion of Nation.
Yeah.
And now we have Long Earth and, of course, Dodger. And two very different books. And they've got probably two different audiences from your perspective. So Dodger is in an alternate Victorian reality. Is that true to say?
What I call it is a fantasy based on a reality. There are very few things in Dodger that I've made up, apart, obviously, from the girl in the plot. But, what other things have I made up? Not very many. Sorry?
Sweeney Todd has been
Oh yeah, well no, I didn't make up Sweeney Todd. Someone else has made up Sweeney Todd. Sweeney Todd plays a major role in this. I was wondering whether to say that.
But this isn't the same alternate reality as Nation, is it?
No. I mean, it's another book by the same person. That's not too difficult to understand.
Not uncommon either.
It's good for my soul every now and again to get away from this world, just simply so that I can look at it from a long way away and stop it getting stale. And I did have an awful lot of fun with Nation. Yes. And in fact, I have to say that more than fun, I mean, Nation arrived like a bang one day in my mind. I held off doing it for some time because just around about that time, or a little while after I'd had it, we had the last great tsunami that you might remember. In fact, the one even before now, I have to say, the Japanese one. And I didn't want to, I think people would say I was exploiting it in some way, but I was thinking of Krakatoa, of course, when I was writing it. And I just had to write it, and and it gripped me, and I worked incredibly hard on it, almost well into the night, getting it right, and putting so much in it, and years and years of serendipitous reading was ploughed into it. Yeah. I've been reading. Since I ever got to the library, I was reading everything, and I started remembering various things about Polynesian culture and other stuff, and it was all, it was like the tide that had been going out for years was now coming in again and splashing straight into my head, and it took a lot out of me because and especially as I was working my way to the ending. And again, Narrativia, who is my patron goddess, was by my side at all times, because when I needed to know something, I met somebody or read something that actually told me what I needed to know. To some extent, the same things happened with Dodger.
So if we look at a timeline that goes from Nation through to Dodger, right? In 2008 we have Nation, a book for young adults. And it deals with natural disasters. It deals with a very painful transition from childhood, adolescence into adulthood. Right? Then we have Unseen Academicals, which brings you back to Discworld.
Can I just mention something about Nation? Some people said that it didn't end properly. These were mostly Americans, I have to say.
Really,
and I said, I think
a happy ending.
They wanted a happy ending. And I said, well, it wasn't an unhappy ending. No. It was a right ending, which is neither happy or unhappy. It was what had to happen for the world to continue. And besides, it had allowed me to do a lot of things I wanted to do like having Richard Dawkins in trouble with a snake, only for the fun of it, and to mention a few people that I really liked and admired.
But when you move on from Nation,
Yeah.
we went back to Disc, and we had Academicals, which dealt with football, but really at the heart of it was about prejudice and racism.
Well, in the heart of it is a lot of things, actually. I shoved a lot of things in there. It's a kind of complex.
It is. It's a complex book on which leads on to Snuff, another complex book, which at its heart, while it brings back a hero of many people in the room, deals with ethnic cleansing and genocide.
Yes, but I never sit down and think, I want to write a book about the nastiness of ethnicity, genocide. It doesn't work like that. I think I'll hark back to the Tiffany Aching books.
Which was next?
Tiffany Aching read in a children's book, in a house in the middle of the forest there lived a wicked witch, and she thought, where's the evidence? And that's what a Pratchett heroine does.
Well, from an evidence base, we go into I Show at Midnight, which is 2011, after Snuff, which deals with supernatural disasters. It deals with the transition to adulthood, and it's a very stark book. I mean, certainly the opening, as in Dodger, you'd be very hard to categorise I Show at Midnight as anything remotely as a children's book. It's a transition book to adulthood.
It is, but I kind of reckoned that if the kids were starting me at age about 6, which I think is probably likely, then they would actually be following, because I was going through it quite slowly. But by the time that they got to the end, they were ready for it. And I think this is where I put on the big hat. Oh, sorry, I've still got the big hat on. Kids who read, kids who are going to read throughout their life for pleasure, I like meeting them, I have to say. They can deal with that stuff. They can deal with the stuff that's in I Shall Wear Midnight, most certainly. Because it's being read. On the screen, it would be terrifying.
Yes.
But thinking back to my own late childhood and early adolescence, I learned an awful lot of words that my mum and dad would really rather I didn't know, because I was reading. They knew that reading was a good thing, and I read everything, and I read, as you know, every book in the library, especially if it wasn't one I should have been reading. Because that's how you should do it. That's where you come across these things without mum and dad being there, and you're by yourself, and it's a nice day, and you can come to terms with what you've read. And I think that's... I'm going to... soon, there's going to be another Discworld convention. And when I go there, they're going to be Discworld children. And they're like the Midwich Cuckoos, because they've grown up with two parents that read Discworld. Because two fans breed, you know. It's a terrible thing.
Should be outlawed, eh?
Yeah, and their eyes sort of sparkle. They're going to take over the universe somewhere. Because they've been brought up in a house with books all over the place, many of them mine. Yeah. And the best gift you can give a child is an ability to enjoy reading, and indeed to enjoy letters and words themselves.
So no better place to talk about reading and books than
that's why I like being here.
Than this room, right? So there's about 250,000 books on the shelves in this room. If we were going to take your output as an author, we would need 320 of these rooms to hold it, because we just passed the 80 million book mark. Is that a milestone for you? Do you measure your volume in volume?
I don't know about other authors, because authors don't normally just congregate around a teepee.
There's no club.
when I finish the books and they've gone out, they more or less disappear from my radar. That was a book. It was fun to do it. People liked it. It made me money. It was a lot of fun. I'm glad. But I'm already on to at least one more book, because they are the new books. And now available brain space is being used up with those books.
And recycled.
Was it recycled? Heavens Betsy. Of course, you can strip the letters, you can strip the words down, because some of the letters might be useful again.
In the right order.
Well, yes. But you remember them fondly, obviously, if they're drawn to your attention. For example, people might be surprised that one of my favourite books, really, was Monstrous Regiment. Because it wasn't a usual type of Discworld book, and I had to do some very interesting research among some lesbian ladies.
As one does.
Well, one does, as very nice ladies. A good cup of tea.
Mm-hmm. And a pair of socks.
Socks were not mentioned. And I actually found, apart from anything else, found lots and lots of stuff that I could use. Lots of stuff that I thought was, wow, I didn't really know this kind of stuff was happening. So I really love a book which I get a lot out of, as well as the readers, if you see what I mean. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I think Dodger has been like that for me, because I had to do some of the research I already had, but there's lots of things in Dodger that I had to look up, or have to go and find someone that knows about this particular kind of thing, just to get very small details quite right. And even then, I'm sure I've made one or two faux pas.
It's permissible, I suppose.
Well, I mean, as I said, it's a fantasy based on a reality. I mean, this is not, a life history or anything like that.
I had written down that as a device, it was fantastic historical fiction rather than historical fiction.
What?
Dodger, and that approach, the alternate line, to take.
Well, actually, I did love the Flashman books by George MacDonald Fraser. And I suppose Dodger, in a sense, is similar. In fact, you take a person that doesn't exist and put them in a world which did. Beyond that, I think there's no real similarity. But I actually tried, there's long passages in the book where Dodger is going about his business, trying to find things out and various other things, and the people he meets, and the fine detail of things. And you really cannot do it justice, because you'd bore the reader with so many things.
In detail.
But you just have to, yes, exactly. The details which are absolutely fascinating to me, but probably not to everybody else. But somehow, when you've got the details, and you've got them nailed down, you feel kind of happy about that. I don't know why. It's something to do, possibly, when my dad found I was enjoying reading, he said, there's a book that you really ought to read. And he said, and it's probably a naughty book. Don't know because I was thinking, oh no, Dad, it's not going to be that, is it? I think I know about that. We had it at school, It was a book called The Specialist. You've read it, Jack, have you? It's still around. Every now and again, it comes back into print. Mm-hmm. It was written by an American, and it's about a privy builder. A man, everyone here must know what an outdoor privy is like. Mm-hmm. And it is funny, because this man wants to be the specialist of building privies. And he's very keen on his work, and he's not boasting. but he talks about it.
Craftsman.
He's a craftsman, yes. Yeah. And he gives the people that come to him his advice, and you hear his advice as where you actually put the privy and things. And it is full of a wonderful humour. There are no jokes as such. The whole thing is simply humorous. And my dad thought that was one of the best books in the universe. And it comes reasonably close.
Did it have any influence on the world of poo?
Oh, the world of course it did. But the point is, I grew up, and I'm in bit, and I hope Colin's going to help me with this. I'm trying to write my autobiography. And of course, you have to start an autobiography by telling people what it was like when you was a kid. I started to do that and looked at what I'd written, and I thought, my grandfather and my father would almost certainly have written almost exactly the same things down, because we lived in the country, and in the country things don't change all that much. And so, I knew all about privies because there was a busted old one where in the real ramshackle place we lived, and instead there was an old Elson toilet which my dad used to upend once a week.
Relocate.
Yeah, relocate. And next year, on that spot, the tomatoes were ever so big and tasty.
But salads weren't that popular in your house, were they?
Actually, no one ever got sick. I think someone might be able to tell us why. Probably because we shared all the same germs, and so I was brought up in a world where hygiene is in your face, as it were.
Well, so the world of poo, for those who haven't noticed the charts, went in fittingly at number 2 in the best-selling.
Yes, that was rather good.
That was pretty. That's narrativia at work, I think. And then shortly afterwards, number 1 was The Long Earth, which is again another new issue, another non-Discworld book, and a book that is very different. It's a science fiction book. It's a pure science fiction book, I would nearly say.
Well, it's not pure science, but it's got fiction.
Yeah, we were waiting for the science to be woven in over time, particularly in the sequel that you alluded to today.
I suppose so, yeah.
But it does actually precipitate a question, which I'm going to ask because I'm sitting here and I get to ask the questions. It's a question from me, right? And people will have their opportunity to ask their own questions, but this is my question, Terry. If you go back and you look at one particular species in your work, and
species?
Yes, species.
Oh yes, I know what you're going to say. I know you're fixated.
I have a fixation, yes. So the question is, elves. What have you got against elves? And I'll contextualize it, right? So, to quote you in Lords and Ladies, elves are terrific. They beget terror. Right? The manifestation of elves in your work, right? In Long Earth as a species.
Right? That's not all of the quote.
There's more, yes. But this is the thread of this one. Is,
yes, what I'm getting at.
They're glamorous.
Yeah, yes. Have you got it all there?
I haven't got it all here. No.
I can't remember all of it now. It was a long time ago.
But the one that resonates is they beget terror because of they're not nice. It's not Legolas.
One reason for doing that, and also going through all the words, where the words, as I recall, were nice words, but once you think about them, they're not nice words. That's because I like to play with words, for God's sake. Because that's what words are for. It's my job.
No, it's more about the elves and the treatment of the elves. I mean, we have the campaign for equal heights, and this one is about, we have Tolkien and Legolas and VO5 and Pan10 and people with frowns, and that's the manifestation of elves in his work. But then in Long Earth, which is non-Discworld, elves make an appearance, but not the elves of myth.
Well, yes, this is where the cycle goes round. Why don't I like the elves? Well, many in my family lose their hair young, and elves have long hair, bastards.
That'll do, I'll take that.
I can't think of anything actually better. No, it is, that comes from the same mind that created Tiffany Aching, who decided that she's going to be a witch because she's got the wrong hair colouring to be the fair maiden or the princess. So she's going to go against narrativia. She's going to be a witch. And I thought, elves are always good. And thanks to Colin and some books he published once upon a time, I knew that not all elves
Are good.
were Legolas. And so I thought, yeah, they could be nasty and playful in a nasty way, like a child is with an ant.
Or a cat with a mouse.
Or a cat with a mouse, exactly. So, I mean, actually, rather like human cats in a way.
Yeah, that manifestation, it comes through. And in Long Earth, it's...
So in that case, why not do it? Otherwise, you're writing Tolkien all over again.
And we wouldn't do that. We heard today, for those who weren't there, we had a session today in the Science Gallery where we talked about the City of Science of Discworld in the context of Dublin as the City of Science in 2012. And we heard today that the Science of Discworld 4 is en route. But I suppose one of the pressing questions that will come from the floor is, when are you going to go back to the disc for a traditional Discworld adventure?
An additional Discworld adventure is actually on my computer at the moment. But Jack and Ian want me to complete the Science of Discworld 4. Steve, and indeed myself, and probably you too, would like me to get involved with the sequel to Long Earth. There's not many hours in the day, is there? Where would you actually like me to start?
Well, I think what we'll
and
do...
then come here, you see. I waste all this time every time coming around here talking to you. I could be working.
The traditional greeting when I pick them up at the airport is, I could be writing.
Yeah.
So, thank you for indulging my questions.